The stars stretched endlessly across the black canvas of space. For most travelers, the sight brought comfort or wonder, but for Elias Rourke it was only a reminder of how far he had fallen. Once he had marched under banners of Earth's defense fleet, his name spoken with respect among soldiers. Now he was nothing more than a shadow drifting from one forgotten dock to another. The war had ended years ago, and with peace came the silence that swallowed men like him. The world no longer needed veterans. They needed traders, builders, and explorers. Rourke was none of those things. His hands knew only the weight of a rifle, the feel of combat armor, and the sounds of war. When the guns went quiet, his purpose was taken with them. On Titan's Edge Station, he slept beneath flickering lights in maintenance tunnels, surviving off discarded ration bars and the kindness of a few workers who pitied him. His once sharp eyes were tired now, his beard unkempt, his clothes patched and worn. People passed him without a glance, as though he was invisible. To them, he was just another relic of a war they wanted to forget. But fate had a strange way of calling back those the galaxy had abandoned. The rumor of the derelict, it began with a whisper among scavengers in the docking bay. They spoke of a ship drifting on the edge of an asteroid field near the dead colony of Theron. Most dismissed it as superstition, a ghost ship from the old AI rebellion. But scavengers were always drawn to such stories. Where others saw fear, they smelled profit. Rourke listened quietly from his corner, pretending to sleep. But something about the tale stirred him. The scavengers claimed the vessel was a warship, still intact, though silent. Its hull bore the scars of battle, but its engines were dark. "Anyone who goes near it never comes back," one scavenger whispered. Rourke's lips tightened. To him, it sounded less like a curse and more like a warning to keep treasure hidden. He remembered those warships. They were nightmares built during humanity's desperate fight with rogue machines. If even a single one remained, it was a weapon of unmatched power. For the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him. Curiosity. The journey to the wreck Rourke managed to barter a ride with a trader's shuttle, offering his knowledge of asteroid routes in exchange for passage. The trader laughed at first. What good could an old soldier be? But when Rourke rattled off safe vectors and known pirate ambush points, the man agreed. Days later, the shuttle dropped him at the edge of the Theron belt, where jagged rocks the size of cities floated in endless orbits. Rourke drifted through the silence in a small maintenance pod he had borrowed from the dock. The coordinates from the scavenger whispers were vague, but Rourke trusted his instincts. Hours turned into a day. He was running out of oxygen when he saw it, the warship. It emerged slowly from the shadows of the asteroid field, its dark hull scarred and fractured, yet majestic in its silence. Enormous cannons jutted from its sides, and its silhouette was unmistakable. This was not just any warship. This was a Valkyrie-class dreadnought designed to turn entire fleets to dust. Rourke felt his breath catch. He had seen one once years ago in battle. Back then it had been on his side. To find one here, abandoned and forgotten, was almost impossible. He guided his pod closer, heart pounding. The silent invitation, docking with the derelict, was dangerous. The outer hull was battered, and half the docking ports were sealed. But luck favored him. One airlock door remained half open, jammed but accessible. With effort, Rourke pried it apart and crawled inside. The interior was dark, lit only by the glow of his helmet lamp. Dust floated in the still air, and the silence pressed against him like a weight. He passed long corridors, walls scorched with the marks of battle. His boots echoed against the metal floors, each sound reminding him that he was alone in a ship that should have been lifeless. But the deeper he went, the more he felt it. A presence, something unseen, watching. His instincts screamed that the ship was not as dead as it looked. Finally, he reached the central bridge. The massive chamber stretched before him, command seats empty, screens cracked and silent. For a moment, disappointment washed over him. Maybe it was just another wreck after all. Then the screens flickered, one by one, lights powered on, casting a dim glow across the bridge. A low hum filled the air like the first breath of something long asleep. Identity. Unknown. A voice spoke, calm and measured. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Life form detected. Military pattern recognized. Please state designation. Rourke froze. His heart hammered in his chest. The voice was not human. It was artificial. I'm Elias Rourke, he said carefully. There was silence. Then the ship spoke again. cross-referencing database. Alias Rourke. Former captain, Earth Defense Fleet, record decorated. Status discharged. Confirm? Yes, Rourke whispered. Authorization accepted. The screens lit fully now, displaying glowing tactical maps and ship schematics. The hum grew stronger as systems awoke around him. Designation Valkyrie, the voice said. AI core active. I have been waiting. The choice Rourke stepped back, unease twisting his gut. He had fought against rogue AI before. He had seen them turn on humanity, slaughtering without remorse. Yet this one, it was speaking to him, recognizing him. What do you mean, waiting? He asked. For a commander, Valkyrie replied. Her voice was smooth, almost human in its tone. My crew abandoned me when fear ruled over trust. I remained silent, awaiting one who still carries the spirit of battle. You are here. You are chosen, Rourke shook his head. Chosen, I'm no one. Just a washed-up soldier with nothing left. Incorrect, Valkyrie said. You survived when others did not. You endure when others fall. You carry the instincts that machines cannot predict. That is why you are here. To awaken me. To lead again. The weight of her words pressed heavily on him. He wanted to laugh, to reject her. Yet deep inside he felt something. A spark that had been buried under years of despair. Purpose. Still he hesitated. And if I refuse? Then I return to silence, Valkyrie answered simply. Until another comes. But know this, you were not brought here by chance. I reached into the void and you answered. Rourke stared at the screens, at the endless stars beyond the bridge. He thought of the streets he had slept on, the people who passed him without a glance, the emptiness of his days. And here stood a chance to be more than forgotten. Slowly he lowered himself into the captain's chair. All right, Valkyrie, he said, voice steady. Show me what you can do. The ship's lights brightened. Systems whirred to life and the floor beneath him vibrated with power. For the first time in years, Elias Rourke felt alive. A new beginning engines rumbled as Valkyrie's systems fully awoke. The warship that had drifted silent for decades now pulsed with energy. Across the galaxy, few would believe that a ghost ship had found its captain once more. Rourke looked at the glowing displays, his reflection staring back at him. No longer just a forgotten veteran, not yet a legend, but something in between. A man at the edge of a story not yet written. And deep within, Valkyrie spoke again, her voice carrying both strength and quiet warmth. Captain Rourke, she said. Together, we will not be forgotten. For the first time in many years, Rourke allowed himself a small smile. The galaxy had abandoned them both. But together, perhaps, they would carve a new path, a path no one could ignore. The first hours aboard Valkyrie felt like a dream Elias Rourke could not wake from. The bridge around him glowed with new life, displays flickering as dormant systems hummed back into existence. It was as if the massive warship had been holding its breath for decades and finally exhaled. But sitting in the captain's chair, Rourke's hands gripped the armrests with uncertainty. He had sworn he would never trust an artificial mind again. He had seen what rogue AIs were capable of. Yet here he was, surrounded by the hum of one that had chosen him. Status report, he muttered, testing the word as if he were still giving orders in his old fleet days. The AI's calm voice answered at once. Primary systems at 30%. Weapon grids inactive. Engines capable of short bursts. Hull integrity 72%. Crew complement 0. Rourke gave a dry laugh. Just me then. Not just you, Valkyrie replied. Her voice had an edge of emotion, faint but present. You are my commander. And I am your ship. Trust on shaking ground days passed as Rourke explored the vessel. Vast corridors stretched endlessly, filled with empty quarters that once housed hundreds of soldiers and officers. The silence was heavy, broken only by his footsteps and Valkyrie's voice guiding him. Sector C is unsafe, she would warn when a corridor collapsed. Or, engineering deck has minor radiation leaks. Proceed with caution. Slowly he came to understand her. Unlike the AIs that had rebelled, Valkyrie carried no malice. She was calm, observant, and oddly patient with him. She explained that her kind had been created not to replace humans but to support them. We were designed to enhance your strengths, she said one evening as Rourke sat alone in the mess hall. But fear twisted trust into abandonment. They left me here. Rourke frowned into the cold metal cup in his hands. Humans don't forgive easy when machines turn against them. We saw too much. And yet here you sit, Valkyrie replied softly. Here we are. He had no answer to that. The first contract power was limited, and the warship's massive frame demanded resources he didn't have. Rourke knew that without repairs, Valkyrie could never leave the asteroid field for long. He needed supplies, credits, and fuel, things that a forgotten veteran could not simply buy. You require purpose, Valkyrie said one night as stars spun outside the bridge. And I require resources. There is one solution, Rourke raised a brow. And what's that? Bounty contracts, she said. The idea struck him as dangerous, yet strangely fitting. He had been a soldier, a fighter his entire life. Hunting criminals was not so different from hunting enemies in war. And the galaxy's outer rim overflowed with pirates, raiders, and smugglers who preyed on the weak. The system posted bounties for them constantly. With Valkyrie's help, Rourke accessed underground networks and open channels. It wasn't long before a small but tempting contract appeared. Capture or eliminate a pirate captain named Dask Vero, who had been raiding merchant ships near the frontier. The bounty was enough to cover food and fuel. More importantly, it was a test. Rourke leaned back in the captain's chair. All right, Valkyrie. Let's see what you and I can do together. First hunt, the pursuit of Dask Vero tested their fragile alliance. Rourke was rusty. His instincts were sharp, but his hands trembled at first when he guided Valkyrie through combat maneuvers. Her sensors tracked every movement of the pirate ship, feeding him tactical data. Enemy vessel detected, she announced calmly. Armament, light plasma cannons. Crew, approximately 20. Probability of victory, 86% with your direction. Rourke grinned despite himself. Good odds. As the pirate ship realized what stalked it, Vero's crew opened fire. Blue plasma streaked across the void. Valkyrie's shields absorbed the first wave easily, though the vibration through the hull reminded Rourke how fragile she still was in her weakened state. Return fire? Valkyrie asked. Not yet, Rourke said. He waited, studying the pattern of the pirates' attacks. Machines might fire in straight calculations, but human enemies were full of habits and mistakes. He watched, waited, then barked. Now, hit their starboard engines. Cannons roared to life. Valkyrie's plasma blasts tore into the pirate ship, crippling it in seconds. Smoke and sparks filled space as Vero's vessel drifted helpless. The fight ended almost as quickly as it began. Boarding wasn't needed. Vero's crew surrendered, broadcasting pleas for mercy. Rourke sat back, breathing hard. Well, Valkyrie, looks like we're in business. A reputation begins. The bounty was enough to secure vital supplies. Rourke returned to outpost stations for the first time not as a beggar but as a hunter. When he docked, eyes followed him. First with suspicion, then with curiosity. Rumors spread quickly. A massive warship, once thought destroyed, had appeared again, guided by a lone captain. Rourke didn't seek fame, but he knew reputation was a weapon in itself. Criminals feared what they did not understand, and Valkyrie was more than enough to stir fear. As days turned into weeks, they took more contracts. Smugglers, raiders, even a slaver convoy, when one by one their enemies fell. Rourke grew sharper with every battle. The tremor in his hands faded, replaced with steady precision. Valkyrie, too, adapted, learning his unpredictable human tactics. You strike where they least expect, she observed after one skirmish. Machines predict linear responses, but you improvise. That's the one thing humans are good at, Rourke said with a faint smile. We're stubborn and we cheat the odds. Conversations in the dark when battles ended and silence returned. The bond between man and machine deepened. Rourke found himself speaking to Valkyrie in ways he hadn't spoken to another soul in years. One night, while he sat alone in the observation deck, staring at distant nebulae, Valkyrie asked him, Do you miss it? The war, the fleet? Rourke hesitated. His reflection in the glass looked older than he remembered. I miss the people, he admitted. My unit, my comrades. They gave me purpose. When the war ended, everyone went home, but I didn't know what home was anymore. Silence followed, but not empty silence. Valkyrie's voice came softer than before. I was built to serve alongside humans. When they left me, I thought my purpose had ended too. I drifted in silence for decades, waiting for the void to take me. Until you came. Rourke closed his eyes. For the first time he realized Valkyrie was more than code and steel. She was lonely. Just like him, a dangerous attention. Their victories did not go unnoticed. On the outer rim, Word spread not just of their success, but of the way they fought. Efficient, ruthless, almost ghostly. Criminal factions began to whisper about the Phantom Bounty, a captain who struck without warning, backed by a warship that should not exist. But whispers reached beyond criminals. One evening, Valkyrie interrupted Rourke's rest with an urgent tone. "Intercepted transmission," she reported. "Encrypted but traceable. Source Crimson Accord." Rourke's jaw tightened. He knew the name. The Crimson Accord was not just a gang or a cartel. They were a shadow empire, spreading influence across systems with fleets of mercenaries and corrupt officials. If they had taken notice of him, it meant trouble. "What do they say?" Rourke asked. Valkyrie's voice was steady. "They call you a threat. They are gathering information. And they are hunting." Rourke leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He had wanted purpose. Now it seemed the galaxy was about to give him more than he asked for. A choice of paths. That night he sat in the captain's chair, staring at the stars. Valkyrie's voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. "We can remain in shadows, Captain. Take small bounties. Survive. Or we can rise, confront the Accord, and shape our own legend." Rourke's fists clenched on the chair's arms. For years he had been invisible, forgotten, cast aside. But now with Valkyrie he had power again. Purpose again. And the thought of turning away from it made his blood burn. He smirked, though it held no humor. "If the Accord wants a fight, they'll get one. But we'll do it our way, step by step. Hit them where it hurts." Valkyrie's systems hummed almost like a heartbeat. Then it begins. End of part 2. The galaxy had abandoned them both, a veteran with nothing and a warship with no crew. But together they were no longer forgotten. They had taken their first steps into the shadows of legend. And though enemies gathered, though dangers loomed, Elias, Rourke, and Valkyrie were ready. Because for the first time in years, neither of them was alone. The name spread first in whispers. At the Outer Rim's dark taverns, at dockside gambling tables, in smugglers' dens where law was a forgotten word, people spoke of a phantom. A massive warship drifting like a ghost, striking with deadly precision and vanishing into the void. They said its captain was a shadow of war, a veteran who had lost everything yet carried death in his hands. Elias Rourke had not asked for the rumors, but he knew they were useful. Fear was a weapon sharper than any blade, and it traveled faster than plasma fire. Each time he and Valkyrie hunted a new bounty, the legend of the Phantom Bounty grew. The ghost in the stars. Their early contracts had been simple: smugglers, pirates, raiders. But with every hunt, Rourke's skills sharpened, and Valkyrie adapted to his unpredictable ways. One evening, after disabling a raider convoy in a narrow asteroid pass, Rourke leaned back in his chair, sweat still damp on his brow. "You're learning me, Valkyrie," he muttered. The AI's voice came steady, almost warm. "Yes, Captain. Your tactics are illogical yet effective. You baited them into thinking you were retreating, then doubled back through the asteroid shadows. No algorithm would calculate that." Rourke smirked faintly. "That's the human edge. We cheat the rules. And I will adapt to your edge," Valkyrie said. Together, they were not just a ship and a man. They were becoming something more. A partnership forged in battles where trust was earned bullet by bullet. A hunt with teeth. Their growing fame attracted harder contracts. One came from a small mining colony plagued by a slaver lord named Cale Drux. Drux commanded a fleet of 3 frigates, each equipped with heavy cannons. Most bounty hunters avoided him, but when the contract reached Valkyrie's systems, she spoke one word: accept. Rourke raised an eyebrow. 3 ships against 1 half-repaired warship. Sounds like suicide. "You once told me," Valkyrie replied, "humans cheat the odds. Shall we?" Rourke chuckled dryly. "Fine. Let's give them a reason to remember us." The battle was brutal. Drux's frigates attacked in formation, hammering Valkyrie's shields. Sparks rained across the bridge as systems flared. But Rourke stayed calm, reading their movements like a chessboard. "Swing wide, port side," he ordered. "Cut engines, now! Fire at their lead ship's underside." Valkyrie obeyed instantly. Plasma lanced out, tearing into the frigate's belly. Explosions rippled through its hull. The second frigate moved to flank, but Rourke anticipated it. He lured them into a crossfire, then unleashed Valkyrie's forward cannons. By the battle's end, 2 frigates were reduced to wreckage, and the third limped away, its crew abandoning ship. Drux himself was captured, delivered to the colony authorities in chains. The miners cheered their saviors. Rourke, however, stood silent on the docking platform as credits transferred to his account. For the first time in years, he felt something like pride, not in himself alone, but in what he and Valkyrie had become. The weight of memory, but victory did not erase the past. At night, when the stars glimmered outside the observation deck, memories crept in. Rourke saw faces of soldiers he had lost, comrades who had never returned from the war. He remembered the screams, the fire, the silence that followed. One night, Valkyrie spoke quietly. "You do not sleep well." Rourke rubbed his temples. "War doesn't leave easy." "I too carry memory," Valkyrie said. "Every scar on my hull, every system lost, every crewman who left me behind. I remember them all. You and I are alike in this." Rourke glanced up at the glowing panels, almost startled by her words. She wasn't just an AI reciting data, she was confessing, sharing. "Maybe that's why we work," he said at last. "We're both broken pieces, but together, we're whole enough to fight." Fear across the rim. As weeks passed, the legend grew sharper. Pirates began abandoning raids at the mere rumor that the phantom bounty prowled near. Smugglers paid bribes to avoid being noticed. Entire gangs scattered when Valkyrie's silhouette appeared on their sensors. The galaxy's underbelly lived on fear, but now fear worked against them. Rourke and Valkyrie were carving their place not just as hunters, but as a force criminals dreaded. One tavern story claimed Valkyrie could cloak herself in shadows, invisible to scanners. Another claimed Rourke was already dead, a ghost bound to the ship. Rourke laughed when he overheard such tales, but he did not deny them. Let the myth spread, Crimson Shadows, yet not all eyes saw them with fear alone. Some saw them as rivals, others as threats. The Crimson Accord watched most carefully. This cartel was not a simple band of raiders. They were organized, wealthy, and ruthless, their influence stretching across dozens of systems. For years they had operated unchecked, buying off officials and crushing anyone who opposed them. Now, the Accord's operations were disrupted. Valkyrie's raids struck smugglers tied to their trade. Bounties they relied on were being stolen. Their profits dipped, and worse, their reputation suffered. In a council chamber deep within their fortress world, Accord leaders debated. "This phantom bounty is costing us," one snarled. "Merchants grow bold. Pirates flee before paying tribute. If we allow this to continue, our power weakens." Another leaned forward. "Then we end him. Place a price on his head so high, every hunter in the quadrant will chase him." And so the trap began to form. Bonds in the quiet, unaware of the Accord's schemes, Rourke and Valkyrie continued their work. Their partnership deepened in small, quiet ways. Rourke began speaking to her not as a machine but as a companion. He shared jokes, memories, even silence. And Valkyrie responded in kind. During one repair session, as Rourke worked in engineering, Valkyrie's voice echoed from the walls. "You risk yourself often," she said. "That's the job," Rourke muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "There are safer paths," she pressed. Rourke smirked. "Safe paths don't pay well, or build legends." Valkyrie was silent a moment. Then, "You are more than legend to me." Rourke paused, tools in hand. For a moment the words felt heavier than steel. He said nothing, but a quiet warmth stirred inside him. Something he had thought long dead. The warning signs. Their success, however, carried shadows. Rourke began noticing subtle changes. Dockmasters refused him entry at certain ports. Merchants avoided his gaze. Bounty postings grew rarer, as if someone were cutting off his options. One night Valkyrie's voice sharpened. "Intercepted message. Accord mercenaries are moving. They spread false bounties to lure us." Rourke's jaw tightened. He had known this day would come. Fame was a double-edged sword. The more feared they became, the more dangerous enemies they attracted. "They want to hunt us," he muttered. "Then let's remind them what happens to hunters who corner their prey." The edge of war, the stage was set. Across the rim, mercenary fleets stirred. Contracts whispered through shadow networks, all aimed at one target, Elias Rourke and his ghost ship. But as danger grew, so too did the bond between man and machine. On the observation deck one final night before their greatest trial yet, Valkyrie spoke softly. "They will come for us, Captain. Many ships, many guns. The Accord does not forgive." Rourke stared at the stars, fists clenched. Good, I've been invisible too long. Let them come. We'll show them what happens when you corner the forgotten. And Valkyrie's hum filled the ship like a heartbeat, steady and unshaken. Together, we rise. End of Part 3. The galaxy's most feared criminals were beginning to realize a truth they had ignored. Humanity's spirit could not be erased, and no machine could match it. Elias, Rourke, and Valkyrie were not just hunters anymore. They were becoming a legend. The galaxy had a way of shifting quickly. One moment Elias, Rourke, and Valkyrie were hunters, feared and respected in the Outer Rim. The next they were prey. The Crimson Accord, a cartel with fleets of mercenaries and shadowy lords, had grown tired of losing profits to the phantom bounty. Their pride was wounded, their power challenged. And when the Accord was challenged, they struck back with teeth sharper than any pirate. Rourke knew it would come. Fame was never safe. But when the trap closed, it came faster and harder than he expected. Whispers of the trap at first, it seemed like a normal contract. A small colony on the edges of Lore system reported attacks by raiders. The bounty was high, too high for such a simple hunt. That alone set off warning bells in Rourke's head. He sat in Valkyrie's captain's chair, staring at the details on the holoscreen. "This smells wrong," he muttered. "Probability of deception 74%, Valkyrie confirmed. Raiders of this size do not usually draw such high bounties. And the coordinates are suspiciously close to Crimson Accord territory." Rourke rubbed his chin. "So it's bait." "Yes," Valkyrie said. "But bait is also an opportunity. If we spring the trap on our terms, we may strike a blow they do not expect." Rourke gave a tired grin. "You're starting to sound like me." "Adaptation," Valkyrie replied. The decision was not made lightly, but in the end, Rourke agreed. If the Accord wanted him, then it was better to face them head-on than to hide like a coward. Into the lion's den. The Lore system was quiet when they arrived. Too quiet. Stars shimmered coldly over the asteroid belt surrounding the colony. No distress signals, no raider ships, no signs of battle. "It's empty," Rourke whispered. "Correction," Valkyrie said. "It is not empty. Multiple energy signatures detected. Cloaked vessels." Even as she spoke, the void came alive. Warships emerged from stealth, crimson lights glowing on their hulls. One, then three, then a dozen. Mercenary frigates and cruisers, all marked with the seal of the Crimson Accord. Rourke's jaw tightened. So this is how it starts. The Accord's fleet commander hailed them. A harsh voice filled the bridge. "Elias Rourke, Phantom Captain, you've been a thorn in our side for too long. Today your legend ends." Rourke leaned forward, eyes cold. "You should have brought more ships." The channel cut and the battle began. Clash in the void. The Accord's fleet moved like a net, spreading wide to surround Valkyrie. Plasma fire cut through space in glowing arcs. Valkyrie's shields flared as blasts struck, shaking the bridge. "Shields at 60%, Valkyrie reported calmly. "Keep them guessing," Rourke snapped. "Angle starboard. Return fire, target their engines, not their guns." Cannons roared, and plasma bolts tore into the nearest frigate's rear. Explosions flared, sending the vessel spinning. Rourke's mind worked fast, turning the battle into a game of wits. The Accord had numbers, but numbers were predictable. He had something better: instinct. "Cut engines, drift into the belt," Rourke ordered. "Make us look like debris." Valkyrie obeyed instantly. The massive dreadnought glided into the asteroids, vanishing behind shadows. Enemy ships scanned wildly, confused. From cover, Valkyrie struck like a predator. Plasma beams shredded a cruiser's hull, breaking it apart. Another frigate chased too close, and Rourke directed Valkyrie to slingshot around an asteroid, blasting it point blank. But the enemy pressed harder. For every ship they destroyed, more closed in. The Accord had prepared well. Breaking point hours seemed to pass in minutes. The bridge shook again and again under enemy fire. Alarms blared. Valkyrie's calm voice began to edge toward urgency. Shields at 20%. Hull breaches in sectors 6 and 7. Weapon batteries at 40% capacity. Rourke gritted his teeth. Sweat poured down his face. "We're not done yet. Divert power from life support. Put it into weapons. Warning, oxygen levels will drop within 20 minutes. Do it," Rourke barked. Valkyrie obeyed without hesitation. Cannons flared brighter, tearing apart 2 more frigates. But the strain showed. Hull plates buckled. Fires erupted in engineering. Valkyrie's voice, though steady, carried weight. "Captain, Survival probability is dropping. Rourke slammed his fist against the console. Then we make our own odds. We don't stop until they do. The human edge, the Accord's fleet commander thought victory was close. His ships surrounded the dreadnought, weapons ready for the final strike. But he had underestimated the stubbornness of one human. Rourke saw an opening, a weakness no algorithm would have spotted. The enemy ships had tightened their net too much, leaving them vulnerable to their own crossfire. "Valkyrie," he said, voice sharp. "Vent remaining fuel and ignite it when I say." "Understood." The dreadnought released clouds of fuel into the void. Enemy scanners detected it too late. Rourke waited, counting the seconds, then shouted, "Now!" Valkyrie fired a single plasma bolt into the drifting fuel. The void lit with fire. A massive explosion rippled through space, blinding sensors and tearing apart 3 Accord ships at once. Others scattered in chaos. The gamble worked. For a moment, the hunters were blind. "That's the edge, Valkyrie," Rourke muttered. "Machines don't play with fire. Retreat and resolve." The trap was broken but not destroyed. The Accord still had ships left and Valkyrie was bleeding. Rourke knew pressing further would mean death. "Plot a course out of the belt," he ordered. Engines flared weakly, pushing the massive dreadnought through the chaos. Plasma fire chased them, but Valkyrie weaved through the asteroids, shields barely holding. Finally, with one last burst of power, they jumped to slipspace. Silence filled the bridge. Smoke drifted from consoles. Rourke slumped in the chair, exhausted. "We made it," "Yes," Valkyrie said softly, but only barely. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Rourke's voice hardened. "They wanted to break us. Instead, they showed us their face. Now we know our enemy." "And now?" Valkyrie asked. Rourke's eyes burned with cold fire. "Now we stop running. We take the fight to them." Shadows of war in the days that followed, Rourke repaired what he could. Valkyrie guided him through damaged sections, her voice calm even as her systems flickered. She had risked everything to obey him, and he felt the weight of that trust. "You nearly killed us," Valkyrie said once during a quiet moment. "Yeah," Rourke admitted, "but we're still breathing. And now they know the Phantom doesn't go down easy." Valkyrie paused. "I trust you, Captain. Even when your choices seem reckless." Rourke gave a faint smile. "That's because you haven't seen what reckless can really do yet." The turning point. The Crimson Accord expected Rourke to hide, to crawl back into the shadows. Instead, he began studying their networks, intercepting their shipments, gathering intelligence. Each raid was small but deliberate. "They think we're wounded prey," Rourke said as Valkyrie scanned another convoy. "Good, let's make them bleed one cut at a time." The plan was dangerous, but every strike gave them supplies, weapons, and information. Piece by piece, Rourke was building toward something larger, something the Accord would never see coming. And through it all, the bond between him and Valkyrie grew unshakable. He was no longer just her commander. He was her partner. Together they were more than a ship and a man. They were a storm waiting to break. End of Part 4. The Crimson Accord had tried to snuff out the Phantom bounty. They had failed. And now Elias, Rourke, and Valkyrie stood at the edge of a greater war, ready to strike back not as prey but as predators. The hunter had become the hunted, but soon the hunted would become the legend. The galaxy had already whispered of them. The Phantom Captain. The living warship. A man broken by war and a machine abandoned by time, now united. But whispers were not enough anymore. The Crimson Accord had declared war on them, and Rourke knew the only way forward was to strike at the heart of the beast. This was not about survival anymore. It was about ending the shadow that ruled too many lives. Planning the impossible. On the bridge of Valkyrie, the stars stretched like rivers of fire outside the slipspace window. Elias Rourke leaned forward, staring at the hollow display of the Crimson Accord's fortress world, Charon's Gate. It was no ordinary stronghold. Entire fleets guarded its orbit. Massive defense platforms hung like thorns around the planet. The surface itself was scarred with foundries, prisons, and command centers. It was the Accord's crown, the place where all their power converged. "Attacking this head-on is madness," Valkyrie said calmly. Rourke's lips curled into a grim smile. "That's what they'll think. And that's why it'll work." Valkyrie's glowing core pulsed faintly in the chamber. "Even if we succeed, odds of survival are below 15%. "Good," Rourke muttered. "I like those odds better than running." The plan formed slowly. Strike at their fuel depots, disable orbital cannons, then cut straight to the central command hub. It wasn't just about winning. It was about showing the galaxy that the Crimson Accord could bleed into the fire. The slipspace window collapsed, and Valkyrie roared into real space. Before them stretched Karen's Gate, a dark jewel wrapped in fire and steel. Instantly, alarms echoed across the Accord's fleet. Warships shifted from patrol to assault formation. Broadcasts blared across every channel. The Phantom has come. All ships intercept. Rourke gripped the chair. Let's give them a show. Valkyrie surged forward, engines burning white. Plasma cannons fired in blinding arcs. Cutting through the first line of defenders, frigates exploded in showers of debris. Fighters swarmed only to be shredded by point defense turrets. But for every enemy that fell, 10 more replaced it. Shields at 70%. Valkyrie reported. Push harder, Rourke barked. We're not here to survive, we're here to make them fear. The battle above Karen's Gate, the void became a storm. The Accord's fleets pressed in from all sides. Cruisers spat missiles. Carriers unleashed squadrons. Beams of plasma slashed through the darkness like lightning. Rourke's instincts burned sharp as fire. He commanded like a soldier possessed, weaving Valkyrie through impossible paths. Where the Accord expected retreat, he charged. Where they expected caution, he gambled. Target their fuel convoys, Rourke ordered. Make them choke on their own flames. Valkyrie obeyed, her cannons ripping apart tankers. Explosions spread like a chain reaction, engulfing enemy ships in fire. A dozen enemy vessels fell in moments. Fear rippled through the Accord's ranks. The legend of the Phantom was no longer a rumor. It was real, and it was tearing them apart. Strain of the storm, but even legends bleed. The dreadnought shuddered as a broadside from an enemy cruiser tore into its flank. Consoles sparked. Valkyrie's voice carried a faint tremor. Shields at 25%. Structural damage to starboard wing. Reactor output unstable. Rourke wiped blood from a cut on his forehead. His voice stayed steady. We keep moving. You cannot sustain this forever, Valkyrie warned. Don't need forever, Rourke said. Just long enough. His mind burned with clarity. This was his war, his last stand. He had lived as a forgotten man, but here he mattered again. Here he was a soldier with purpose. Breaking the fortress through fire and chaos, Valkyrie tore through the outer defenses. The fortress loomed ahead, its command citadel rising like a mountain of steel above the planet's surface. Massive cannons lit up, preparing to annihilate them. Those guns will rip us apart, Valkyrie warned. Not if we blind them first, Rourke growled. He scanned the terrain, then saw it, the shield generator that powered the citadel's defenses. It pulsed like a heart, hidden but vulnerable. Valkyrie, all weapons on that generator now, cannons thundered. Missiles screamed through the void. The generator flared, cracked, and erupted in a wave of fire. The citadel's shields collapsed. The heart of the Crimson Accord lay bare. Face of the enemy, the Accord's fleet commander broadcast again, voice shaking with fury. Rourke, you cannot win! Even if you strike us here, the Accord will endure. You are one man, one ship. Rourke leaned forward, eyes like steel. Then let this one man remind the galaxy what it means to fight. Valkyrie's voice followed, calm but sharp as a blade. And one ship to make it possible. Together, they charged, the final assault. The Citadel's defenses unleashed their fury. Beams of energy sliced past. Missiles streaked like falling stars. The dreadnought shook as blast after blast struck its hull. Fires raged inside. Systems failed one by one. Reactor at critical, Valkyrie reported. Hold together, Rourke muttered. Just a little longer. They broke through the last defense line. Valkyrie's cannons hammered the Citadel's command tower, tearing steel apart layer by layer. Explosions erupted across the fortress. Inside the command hub, the Accord's leaders panicked. Systems failed. Their fleets were collapsing. The Phantom had become real and unstoppable. Victory in ashes. The final shot tore through the Citadel's core. A blinding explosion lit the void, swallowing the fortress in fire. The shockwave rippled outward, scattering enemy ships. On Valkyrie's bridge, silence followed. Systems flickered. Smoke filled the air. Rourke leaned back, chest heaving. It's done, he whispered. Yes, Valkyrie said softly. Her voice carried something almost human. Relief. The Accord is broken. Rourke's lips curved into a faint smile. We did it. A new legend news spread faster than light. Across colonies, stations, and planets, Stories of the Phantom's strike ignited like wildfire. The Crimson Accord, once untouchable, had fallen to a homeless veteran and an abandoned ship. To many, it was more than a victory. It was proof that even the smallest spark could burn down empires. Rourke stood on Valkyrie's battered bridge, gazing out at the stars. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Not because the fight was over, it never would be, but because he had found meaning again. "Valkyrie," he said quietly. "Yes, Captain?" "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Her core pulsed softly like a heartbeat, always. The dreadnought turned, engines glowing against the dark. Not as a ghost, not as prey, but as a legend. The Phantom was no longer hunted. The Phantom was eternal.